You must be able to reach people. You must be able to get in a conversation. There's no add to cart button usually for $50,000 consulting gig or a $20,000 consulting gig, not to mention $200,000. You have to get in conversation. You have to be able to reach them.
Today, discover how a former shoe store clerk cracked the business consulting code, becoming one of the most successful, most sought after, most in-demand consultants on the planet. How he came up with this consulting model is beyond me, but it's absolutely awesome. I'm Ken Newhouse. Building a profitable business isn't only about generating leads and driving sales. It's about who we are and what we're made of. It's about finding the most effective methods to persuade, inspire, and ignite the imagination of others so you can succeed in business. If you're a member of the new breed of entrepreneur, I invite you to join the quest as we reveal the newest and most effective methods you can use to get clients now. Imagine your phone ringing off the hook with an endless stream of new clients wanting to hire you. Revenue consistently growing, and the biggest challenge you face each day is how to delight an ever-growing portfolio of high-value clients. Is that wishful thinking? Is that a pie-in-the-sky daydream considering we're in the heart of the new COVID economy? Well, I'm absolutely thrilled, delighted, and super excited to say absolutely not. Thousands of consultants are using the former shoe store clerk's consulting blueprint and are living in that highly satisfying, highly lucrative world. And the awesome news is that you can too. So how do you do it? How do you generate this level of success in your consulting practice? Simple. All you need to do is practice the art of attracting and winning clients. Now that statement is so important that I'm going to actually repeat it. You generate this level of success in your consulting practice by practicing the art of attracting and winning clients. You noticed that I didn't say you can generate this level of success in your consulting practice by mastering the art of selling consulting projects. And I've repeated this and pointed this out because you don't have to be a top-flight salesperson to enjoy a thriving consulting practice. In fact, selling isn't even on the agenda of this blueprint. Winning business, however, is. And while my guess is that you're smarter than most consultants out there, the good news about achieving this level of consulting success is that it doesn't take an outgoing personality, or it doesn't take a genius-level IQ to win consulting projects, to win new clients into your business. I'm Ken Newhouse, and I'm going to welcome you to episode 395 of the Get Clients Now podcast. And if anyone would know that it doesn't take an outgoing personality or genius-level IQ to win consulting projects, it's the former shoe store clerk, David A. Fields, my guest on today's episode. Now, if you're like me and if you're like my most successful clients, you know this guy. And if you don't, you're in for an amazing ride today because Fields, as I mentioned at the outset of the show, started his journey, imagine this, as a shy shoe store clerk. Think about that for a minute. It's hard to see the connection. Helping people find the right shoes isn't the ideal training ground for a career focused on what's in people's heads. Yet as you're about to discover during today's conversation, Fields learned some important lessons working in those shoe stores, which allowed him to graduate from the position as a humble, shy, introverted shoe store clerk to running an extraordinary, successful 8-figure consulting firm and go on to become one of America's leading thought leaders in the field of helping business consultants become market leaders. Listen, if a shoe store clerk can build a huge, awesome, profitable consulting firm, so can you. Having said that, however, today's conversation isn't about how Fields rose from lowly beginnings to prominent consultant. That would be dull. What's exciting, what's really important is your story. And that's why today's conversation is about the story of how you can attract and win unlimited numbers of high-value clients into your business. Every consultant needs a reliable business development process, and that's why in today's conversation, we're going to dive head first into that topic. Fields is going to unveil his blueprint, the exact guide he and thousands of his students have used to build thriving, successful businesses. Now, going back to the opening of the show, I want you to imagine this scenario. Imagine your phone every single day, not ringing off the hook, but ringing with an endless stream of new clients that want to hire you. Your revenue consistently growing, and the biggest challenge you face, imagine this, is how to delight an ever-growing portfolio of high-value clients. Imagine that. What would that be like? So if becoming a more successful, thriving consultant is important to you, and if that scenario sounds like something you want for your business, you're absolutely going to love today's conversation with my guest, David A. Fields. Now, if by some remote chance you're not familiar with David Fields, Fields is the founder of Ascendant Consulting, a true consultant's consultant who works with elite, solo, and boutique consulting firms worldwide. Fields is also a best-selling author, speaker, consultant, mentor, and head of the Ascendant Consortium, whose clients are the who's who of the business world. Fields was also named by Advertising Age magazine as one of the top 100 consultants in the world. Fields' insights are published in Industry Week, USA Today, CNN Money, Investors Business Daily, Advertising Age, Business Week, Smart Money, and many, many other publications. So if you're ready, let's go ahead and start the conversation with my guest, David Fields. All right, so Dave, it's awesome to have you on the show today. So on behalf of myself and members of the Get Clients Now Nation, I want to welcome you to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing outstanding. Thank you. It's an honor to be here, and I'm really looking forward to it.
You know, I've been looking forward to this interview for 6 months. Normally, it doesn't take this long to get somebody on, but I'll tell you what, it's going to be well worth the wait because your work is fabulous and you're doing a lot of awesome things. And I am, number one, a big fan, first of all, and you've benefited me greatly. So if we could, I want to dive right in. I think most of our...
Hey, well, thank you, first of all. So those are very kind words, so thank you. Now, dive in. I'm all yours.
So most of our listeners, I think, probably know who you are. They've read at least one of your books, and I'm going to go ahead and just throw it in right now. As with every guest I have on, your books are fully guaranteed so that my listener can invest in your book, deploy what's in book number 1 and book number 2, which we'll dive into. We're going to focus on book number 2 today. I think the second one that you've written, more or less. They're going to deploy those, and if they don't see a fabulous return on their investment, which they will, but if they didn't for some reason or no reason at all, email me at customerservice@kennewhouse.com and I will refund you, no questions asked, for the books. They're that good. And the second book, which actually I started reading, which is your first book, The Executive's Guide to Consultants, that's a book for people who want to hire a consultant. But as I was just talking to you before we started, I think every consultant should read that book because it's like a playbook for how to get consulting jobs, how to win consulting jobs from the person hiring's point of view. Yes?
Exactly right. So my business used to be people, corporations would hire me so that they could get better consulting. And I would bring in some contractors. So my whole business this was before the days of Catalant and, all these aggregators. But sort of before that happened, I'd already built that and folks would come to me. So I built this for clients to be able to hire consultants better. It was later that consulting firms started to say, hey, how do you do this? And I ended up working, now my firm works exclusively with consulting firms.
Yeah, it's an absolutely fabulous book. And like you said, it's a bit deep, but certainly I think for my listener, it's a piece of cake, but it's really, like I said, it's a playbook. It's not a one-time read. This is like a manual for your success. But anyway, with respect to you, you've got like a 30-year track history in consulting. You've done a fabulous job on your website, davidafields.com, of kind of laying that out for us. But if you could take a minute or two, give us your backstory and kind of just like 2 or 3 minutes. That's not a hard limit, but how did all this start for you? How did all this begin?
I don't want to bore people with my whole background. I did a decade in corporate, and then I went over to the consulting side. Way back when, the idea of there was something new at the time called trade marketing, which was the intersection of retailers and manufacturers. I had experience in that. There was a consulting firm that specialized in that. It was a natural fit, so I went there. I was very, very fortunate because that firm was run, there were a couple of founders, but one especially was brilliant in his approach and how he approached consulting in general. And I learned literally at his feet. He used to have this couch and he'd make junior people kind of sit on the rug at a coffee table as he would tear apart their presentation. So I was really just fortunate in where I landed. Worked up to partner in that firm. Then one other partner and I decided to spin off and create our own business. And as I tell people often, that worked fabulously well for about 4 weeks. And then that fell apart. And I ended up running this business. I knew I was the back room engine guy. I was not the relationship sales guy. My job, because this is what I had done in our firm, was to come up with really good models and deliver it. I very quickly had to learn how to win clients. So had a miserable first year, got some mentoring, got some help, started to figure it out, and built the business I had just told you about, where the Ascendant Consortium, where I was sourcing business and then bringing in consultants. It was a very lucrative model. It was a great model. As a lark, I decided to help out a couple of consultants on a coaching thing. And then that side of the business ate the corporate side. It just exploded. It's honestly so much fun working with consulting practices, anywhere from small ones up to, we have some very large, couple $100 million clients, but 100 million is probably more where we top out. We do a lot of what we call 2 to 5. If you're $2 million, how do we take you to 5? How do we take you then to 10, to 25? Or if you're $300,000, how do we take you to $1.5 million and then double and double? So, my practice has been a progression of going where the market is. Even in the original firm where I grew up to be a partner, my business was different from the rest of the firm. And that's something we can discuss if it's relevant as we go in. How's that? Was that close enough?
That was awesome. So we're going to talk mainly about the Irresistible Consultant's Guide to Winning Clients, which I guess is your second book. But
yes.
Like I said before, I'm guaranteeing both books, and I do recommend that you invest in both of these books because they are well worth the investment. I mean, they're just really that solid. But you got 6 steps you've outlined in the book. And obviously, due to time constraints, I mean, we'd have to literally be here for a couple weeks straight to go through all this in depth. We're going to limit it. I'm going to limit down the questions I ask, I think, in a way that'll help my listener understand that this is a book that they definitely want to get, read, and deploy and benefit from like immediately. But, one of the first things you talked about in the book is right side thinking or right side up thinking. So if you could, you're really big on, let me look at this real quick. So you're really big on right side up thinking.
Yes.
When I first read that, I'm like, what does that mean? But how does a person get to be like big on right side up thinking, and what exactly is that?
So right side up thinking, and you're right, it's absolutely foundational to my firm's entire approach to consulting. And it's understanding that the business is not about you. It's about them. And them is your prospects, your clients. And while that sounds, kind of simple, in practice, it's extremely hard. It's extraordinarily difficult because we are all built and we all grow up thinking about us. The reason that your listeners, and so speaking to you as listeners, the reason you're watching this or listening to this is because you're hoping that there's something in it for you, that you'll learn something. And so we all naturally act that way all the time. Our natural position is to think, how can I do something for me? But consulting is not about doing something for you. Consulting is about doing something for your client. And then you benefit as a result. So it's very easy conceptually. It's actually quite difficult from a practice standpoint. And we spend entire days with some of our larger firms. We spend entire days saying, how do we make each part of the business more right side up?
With respect to each one of these steps, as I just mentioned at the outset, literally we could spend an entire day on each one of these because they're that relevant, they're that important, they're brilliant. I don't know if you're going to take credit for all of it. I'll give you credit for putting it all together because the fact it's just, I have a successful business and I feel like I learned a lot. I actually feel like I want to go back to school and I would be the guy at your feet sitting on the rug because there's a lot I need to learn. There's a lot I don't know. But what about confidence? One of the things you noted as it relates to right side up thinking is that a lot of consultants, and I think this is probably universal across the board, their confidence wanes from time to time, sometimes more often than it should, because they're focused on the wrong thing. So right side up thinking, how does it relate to our confidence and what it'll do to improve it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a really good observation because this is a challenging business. Consulting is a very personal business. Even though you might be selling a process or an approach, you're to a large extent, you're selling yourself. And even if you have people working for you, you still feel like you're selling yourself. And if a client says no, it can feel deeply personal. So it's easy to become discouraged at the very least. And I have found consultants do struggle with confidence. And up and through their career, I mean, I work with consultants who've been in this game for 40 years. And I ask them what the biggest challenge is. They're like, oh man, I'm just not confident enough. So everybody struggles with it. The right side up thinking approach to it is in part to realize that your self-confidence and your reason to be confident does not actually come from inside, which is the exact opposite of what every therapist and psychologist would tell you, right? You should be internally focused on all of that. And as a person, as a human, yes, your value should be internally focused. But as a consultant, your value is not determined by you. It doesn't matter how good you think you are. Nor does it actually matter how bad you think you are. All that matters is what the market thinks. It's not about you, it's about them. So, in your moments of where you're lacking confidence, if you can return to this idea of, well, has anybody bought from me? Yes. Okay, that expresses some confidence. Have they ever bought from me twice? Have they returned? Yes. Well, what better testimony is there to your value than someone has returned again? And so it's really the market can tell you whether or not to be confident. And there are times when you might try a new offering and the market says no. Well, should you be supremely confident? No, you should set that one aside. But I would embrace what the market's telling you. And most folks are fairly experienced. You don't come into this game fresh out of college. And so think about what the market is telling you because it's about them. And if they are giving you reason to be confident, then embrace that. Does that help? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, you remind me of a much younger version, a much nicer version, but that what you just told me reminds me of what mean old Dan used to drill in my head over and over and over. I'm talking about Dan Kennedy. I'm not sure. Are you familiar with Dan?
I'm familiar with Dan. I don't know him well, but I'm familiar from years ago, though.
Yeah, grumpy old Dan. The story was he was going to die, but I told everybody, listen, he's selling the business. He's not going to die. And lo and behold, miraculous recovery. He's fine. But anyway, hey, listen, I'm going to read a quote from the book because I want to make sure I get it right. But it's really, really important. And this really grabbed me. And again, I found it to be critically important in your book because you front loaded it in the book. Like this was like right up front. And that's one of the things that's told me, hey, this is probably something I should ask a question about. But with respect to running a successful consulting practice, you said, here's the quote. It's kind of a paraphrase. Why is it important to master the art of selling consulting projects versus practicing the art of attracting and winning clients? So why is that important? And then discuss the differences.
Okay. So fundamentally, I don't believe consulting is sold. I believe it is bought. You can't like impulse sell a 6-figure project or a $50,000 project. That just doesn't happen. And so you will be brought in if someone has a need for what your services are. They're aware of that need. They want help. They value what you're offering. And they know you, like you, trust you. So know, like, trust, need, want, and value, which comes up later in the book. If that's all in place, people will buy from you. You can't sell, you can't push consulting because if they don't have the problem, then you can't do anything for them. And you're not there to create problems, hopefully. You're there to solve problems. And so that's fundamentally the difference. We're not trying to sell. We're not trying to pitch. What we're trying to do is make ourselves available for people who need our help and make it easy for them to find us, enjoy working with us or the opportunity, and then hire us.
This is a totally new construct for how to promote and grow your consulting practice than I have been used to for many, many years. And I really, really like it. I mean, I've locked onto this because I just mentioned mean old Dan. And so talking about that framework and that approach, it's pitch and sell and convince and persuade. And yours is completely different. And I really, that's one of the reasons I started trying to learn how to write story, like the elements of story and interviewing people, because I wanted my copywriting to be better. Instead of just like pure direct response, I wanted to add story to it. But your approach to this whole process, I think I don't know how new it is because I'm relatively new to this approach. I think it's fabulous and I'm totally hooked on it. But as it relates to, what are the key differences you think between trying to pitch versus trying to attract, like bringing people to you, your consulting practices? What would be one or two key benefits and one or two key drawbacks, one versus the other?
So the primary benefits of being right side up focused, meaning we're not going to pitch what we want to sell. What we're going to do is listen and offer when people need help. The primary benefit, I think, is for most consultants, like you've just said, it's easier to embrace. And that means you'll actually do it. So to try to adopt a philosophy and adopt an approach which feels foreign to you or feels kind of yucky to you, is hard. You'll rebel against it and you'll find ways to sabotage it and all of that. And so the real benefit is it's easier to embrace, to try on, to wear every day, and therefore you have more success. There are people who are naturally good salespeople, right? They're sellers and they follow techniques like Dan suggested, or like some of the spin selling and all of that, which is still selling. And that stuff's great if you are a natural salesperson. We're working with a firm right now that they're in the sales field, and the CEO of that firm has a hard time embracing right side up because he's such a natural salesperson. And my response to him is, great, do what you're good at. And this is not dogma. This is help is all. And so for him, he can do the old route, the selling route. But the benefit for almost every other consultant who's really a problem solver, right? You're in there solving problems. You're helping a dental practice, or you're helping a dental devices company. You're solving a problem. You're not a salesperson. So to try to adopt a sales technique just doesn't feel good. So that's one of the real benefits. Now, there's another benefit, which is it's very effective. And that helps. That when you listen and you sort of go through the steps and really listen well, then you have an offering which is more attractive, and your clients perceive you as extraordinarily tuned in with them. And that just makes it a lot easier to win business. So, and all the thought leadership, is right on all the things you're going to do that are going to attract business and a thought leadership, that's right on point, because it's not driven by what you want to say, it's driven by what they want to hear.
Yeah, and as it relates to saying what you want to say, I think people make the mistake, which kind of segues into my next question, but a lot of us have made the mistake, I'm guilty of it myself, of telling the client what their problem is when they really don't see that, and trying to offer a solution to a problem they don't really see that exists. And if they do see it, they don't recognize that it's a big problem. And it doesn't matter if it's the biggest problem in the world, because if they don't, it's their business, it's their money, they're the ones who are going to make the decision. And so you're fighting a losing battle when you try to press it. And that's why I really fell in love with this approach. But as it relates to right side up thinking, kind of on I wouldn't say at the tail end of it, but as you move through that, progress through that step, you talked about fishing where the fish are. And again, I'm going to read one of your quotes. It says, why do you think it is so many consultants scrupulously chase the elusive and disinterested, quote unquote, ideal client instead of pursuing the eager client who's available and ready to go? Why do you think that is?
I think there's a lot of marketing people that pitch things like, avatar exercises. Let's describe your perfect client. I personally think that's ridiculous, because unless you can get your perfect client into a conversation, who cares? Right? You can describe your perfect client, but it doesn't matter unless you're in conversation with them, because conversation is where you find out about opportunities, and opportunities lead to projects. So to hell with the perfect client and the avatar. It sounds really sexy, right? And intuitively goes, oh yeah, I should describe my perfect client. But again, that's upside down. That's thinking about, what do I want? As opposed to saying, what does the market want? Who can I be in touch with? And what do they want? I mean, I'm doing this business because a lot of consultants ask me for help because I happen to be good at it. So I just follow what the market wants. That's way easier. I mean, it's just way, way easier than trying to find people who want to buy what I want to sell this. It's like, okay, well, now you got to find people who want to buy that. That's hard work.
And you also have to, it goes without saying, but I do want to mention this, and you do mention it in the book. You have to be able to deliver on the goods. You can't just go out and find a need in the marketplace and say, okay, I'm going to start going after those people. If you can't deliver the goods, you got to be able to deliver the goods.
Yeah, though, Ken, I think it's easier to learn to deliver the goods than it is to try to find people who want to buy that super special thing you're trying to sell. Because even if you can't deliver the goods, you can hire someone to help you. And then you can learn from them along the way. You could partner with someone who does know how to deliver the goods. Again, that was my whole business before this, was selling work. You would say, David, can I help you? And I say, well, Ken, I can't, but I can find an expert who will help you. And then bring in the expert, and the expert impresses you. And I say, great. So this is whatever. It's $100,000. And I pay the expert $50,000. The expert does 80% of the work. That's a good model. So you can learn You can learn to solve new problems. What you can't do is create people who have the problem that you want to solve. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. But I will tell you this, I was resistant to, while I was in chiropractic practice, 6 clinics, 35 employees, associate doctors, radiographic techs, like professional people, I got burnt out on babysitting adults. That's a long story. So my new model, the model that I adopted was I'm going to be a solopreneur, literally, and I'm going to outsource everything. But I was a little resistant. Actually, I was a lot resistant to the chapter on connect, the steps. But I think having the position of the toll booth like you have, like you bring in the business and then outsource it, I think is a fabulous way to do business. My only resistance to that is I think it's a great model, but I'm just a little gun shy. I'm a little averse to, if I get the job, I get the client, I outsource, now I'm responsible. And I guess certainly doing your due diligence and finding the right people you can trust to do the work. It's going to take some effort. It's going to take some work. Once you get through that, I think you could probably sleep better at night knowing that you can count on these people. But for me, the whole idea of putting my name on the line and I'm letting somebody else be responsible for my reputation because they're doing the work, I'm still a little gun shy to that, but now I'm a lot more open to it.
I mean, and that's almost a whole other conversation, which is how do you want to structure your practice? You don't need you don't need to take on so much business that you need subcontractors. You don't need to scale your business. You can build a perfectly good, lucrative, fun, rewarding solo practice. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's a great place to be. If you want to get into a new area and you can't deliver the goods, you might want to hire someone or partner with someone who can deliver the goods while you're learning. But then then you can say, thank you, so much. It was really helpful. I appreciate learning. Now I'm going to try to deliver these on my own. That's fine.
All right. So here's what I want to do. I don't do this all the time, but in my interviews, sometimes I do what's called rapid fire bullets. So in the back of your mind, I want you to hear the Jeopardy music as we're playing.
I'll answer quickly.
And so you get
short. You're saying I'm talking too much.
No, I'm not. Just these particular questions. You've got 30 to 60 seconds, and I give my interview guests time frames so they have an idea of how long to answer. And I learned that when I was in practice. I would ask a patient a question, and if I didn't constrain that and give them a framework, they would end up telling me about, like you mentioned in the book, Aunt Tilly, and the mailman who, had a back problem and all this. I don't want to do that. So, I mean,
yeah, no, this is good because I'll talk about this stuff for hours. I love this stuff.
And I would sit and listen, quite honestly. But anyway, so rapid fire bullets. So you said in the book, to open the floodgates and turn a revenue trickle into a stream or even a raging torrent, you need to identify the quote unquote, the 4 rights. So I'm going to give you each right, and then you got a minute to talk about these. Okay. So the first right of the 4 is the right people. Go.
Okay. I'm going to do them faster than that. Right people starts with the people you know. So most people are trying to, again, do an avatar. You're much better off thinking, who do I know? Because I can get into conversation with them, or who can I quickly reach? And then what do they want? So those are the right people. If you want to dig in there even more, I talk about the network core. The network core are what you really are looking for is A1s. People you have a great relationship with, people you can reach out to and they will reach back. Who can hire you? Those are A1s. If you have 100 A1s, you can build very, very successful into 7 figures. If you have 300 A1s, you can build well into 8 figures, close to 9-figure practice.
And that goes back to connect, not just in the sense of outsourcing, but connecting and making relationships with individuals who can help you along the way. Okay, number 2. The second right of there is the right problem. Go.
Yes, most important of all. The single most important piece to becoming successful with your consulting practice is solving the right problem. A problem that people have that's urgent, that's pervasive enough people have it, and that's expensive for them to leave unsolved or to try to solve internally. If you can find that problem, your business will take off. And people who are struggling usually have a problem right there. They don't know what the right problem is. People who instantly build $4 million practices, like someone called me the other day who's a roboticist and wants to work with us, $4 million, $0 to $4 million in almost no time because he's focused on the right problem. If you hear nothing else in this whole thing, find out the right problem. That's the heart of this business.
And that's one of the things that jumped out at me immediately in this book was explaining from the client's side, the client's perspective, how to determine, hey, listen, this is a problem for us. this is a potential project for us, but is it worth the time investment and the monetary investment and the other projects that may suffer as a result of us bringing a consultant on? And so you give this awesome framework, well, several different frameworks on how to solve that, which I just thought, again, I love this book, by the way. This is an absolutely fabulous book, and I'm only halfway through it. I love them both, but that's a great book. Okay, number 3, the right solution. Go.
Okay. The right solution is one that is credible and reliable and achieves your client's desired outcome. It's not one that's different necessarily. It doesn't have to be unique. It doesn't have to be cutting edge. It just has to reliably, credibly solve your client's problem. Period.
So are you telling me that I don't have to use cutting edge in all of my marketing now? So every other word doesn't have to be cutting edge this and differentiation of this and...
No. Matter of fact, it's a disadvantage. Differentiating is a disadvantage for consultants because clients aren't looking for different. Different sounds risky. And if we all knew that hiring a consultant would work every time, then we'd try cutting edge stuff. But everybody's tried a consultant and had a bad experience, which means what we're looking for as clients is we're looking for someone we just believe is going to deliver the goods. So they want reliable. They don't want new. They don't want different. They want proven, proven, reliable, credible. That's a good solution.
You're a perfect fit for the dental industry because that describes those folks to the letter. They're like risk averse. I mean, even if you got something that's just like nails, if it's something they're remotely unfamiliar with, I don't care how effective it is, they don't want any part of it.
Yeah, well then especially in that industry. Yeah, you just eschew the cutting edge, new, unique. No. It's like we use the proven method that everybody's used for 50 years. We're just really good at implementing it. That will win far more business.
Okay, the last one is the right time. Go.
Okay, the right time for most consultants is not worth considering because you don't know what the right time is. The right time is whenever they have that problem that they want to solve, the right people have, and you could offer the right solution. There are a few folks who know the right time. For instance, if you worked with new dental practices, then the right time is when someone opens a dental practice, and you can identify that. But if it's an evergreen sort of problem or one that just crops up, it's hard to know the right time. And so I would say, don't worry about that. And instead control for that by knocking it out of the park with the right people, the right problem, and the right solution.
Nice. Okay. So I'm going to follow up. Here's, you've already said this, but I'm going to get the quote exactly. I'm going to follow this up and then we're going to do just a couple more rapid fires. You said in the book, it's easier to sell services desired by the people you can reach than it is to find people who desire the services you want to sell. And then here are my bullets. So as it relates to the quote unquote right people, there are 4 critical prerequisites that need to be in place. I'll give you the first one and then you go. Number 1, they're reachable.
Yes. As I was saying before, I mean, you could define President Biden, our current president, as the perfect target, but unless you can get in a conversation with him, who cares? You must be able to reach people. You must be able to get in a conversation. There's no add to cart button usually for $50,000 consulting gig or a $20,000 consulting gig, not to mention $200,000. You have to get in conversation. You have to be able to reach them.
Yeah, let's just clarify that when we talk about the president of the United States being the perfect target, we're talking about as a prospective client and nothing,
as a prospective client.
And nothing else. No other targets we're talking about here. Okay, the second part of that is the problem that you can solve must be big enough. Go.
So it has to warrant hiring you, and it has to be worth your while. One of the easy ways for me when I'm helping consulting firms, they come in, especially small consulting firms, is we get rid of all the little cats and dogs projects. $5,000 here and $7,500 there and all. It's like, just let's get rid of that. You say, yeah, but a lot of people hire me for that. Well, yes, but it's not big enough to be worth your while because we can take that time and reapply it and win the 15s and 20s and 25s and 50s and so on. So the right problem and the right client is one that has a problem big enough to warrant bringing you in and big enough to warrant you wanting to work on it.
Okay. Third, it has to be urgent enough. And I know we touched on this, but I want to reiterate these because I think they're that important. Go.
Okay. So if you have ever been in the situation where you've submitted a proposal or a few proposals, and then you're going, God, how come he didn't get back to me? You're twiddling your thumb, going, why aren't they signing? I've got all these proposals out, nobody's signing. That's because you're not submitting proposals for clients who have an urgent, burning need to hire you. It's a lack of want. Urgency is what allows you to win business now. And so it's critically important. So you don't just spin your wheels.
Awesome. And then the last one is their signing authority must be high enough. How many times have we actually been dealing with the wrong person? Go.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is an interesting one to me because you don't want to be at the highest level in the organization. You want to be at the lowest level of the organization that can hire you. Never any higher. You don't want to be further up. So CEOs tend to be bad targets. Now, in dental practices, I don't know well enough how those work, but you need to be talking to the person who can sign the check, who has that urgent burning need to hire you, and you don't want to be above that.
What are the 3 most important things? They're going to read the book, The Irresistible Consultant's Guide to Winning Clients. What are 3 important takeaways that you can give them that they're going to get just in a rapid fire way? Answer it at your own thing. But what would you say are 3 really big benefits they can get? Or maybe 2.
No, it's all right. That's a tough one because we tried to make every page have something worthwhile. So, right side up thinking we've talked about. So for a lot of clients, that is just or for a lot of readers, that's a relief. It's a breath of fresh air. Just the idea of, oh, wow, I don't have to sell. I don't have to make it about me and what I'm pitching. It's about focusing on them. So that is a big one. The second one, buried in there, there are a couple of techniques that are different. You say, what do you take credit for versus what else is out there? So there are a couple of things that are a little bit new and different. One is something called the turn, which is in there. And that's how you take a conversation that's relationship based, where you have a good collegial relationship with someone, but now you want to talk about business with them. And that feels awkward. Well, there's a technique called the turn, and it's extraordinarily effective. It's one of those things I've kind of figured out, in this case, thanks to Daniel Ariely, who's a brilliant author himself. And when he wrote something, I was like, oh my gosh, that's the answer. Converted it, sort of adapted that for consulting, and it's the turn. So I would look for that because it's super helpful. Also in that book is something called the context discussion, which is all around discovery. You will find that to be extraordinarily helpful. And the more you master it, especially questions around concerns, the more you will find this is actually a quite easy business.
What's the best piece of advice you ever got about making your consulting practice more visible in the marketplace?
That's a tough one. The best advice I ever got, was don't worry about each individual piece. Meaning, so I write a fair amount, right? We release an article every single week. Some of them are quite good. Some of them are okay. And I don't really worry about it. I don't need every single article to be, oh my gosh, this is mind-blowing. Because that kind of pressure just makes it too hard to produce anything, to produce content. So don't worry so much. Just put it out there. Just try stuff. If something goes wrong or people don't like it, then just forget about it. It's okay.
So as it relates to giving a prospective client, a proposal, the negotiating and closing the deal, what's been your biggest failure and how did you overcome it? Or what did you learn from it? You can answer that second half of that question however you want.
I mean, everybody's lost projects. I've lost projects. The biggest failure I had was fairly early on, is I didn't have a good gut instinct on pricing yet. Pricing's the trickiest part of our business. And you learn, and I spend a lot of time with consulting firms on pricing, just a huge amount of time. And part of it is gut. Part of it is having good instincts. Now, you get to inform that. And early on, I hadn't developed that yet. And so I probably lost some projects I didn't need to lose for that reason. Now there are projects, if I lose them, I'm okay on losing them. It's not because I didn't have good gut instincts. It's because either it wasn't the right time for them, which happens, or I've priced myself out of the market, which I'm okay with. If I lose 10 to 15% of projects because the fees are too high, I'm pretty good with that.
You should be, actually. I mean, if you're being accepted every single time, your fees are probably too low. That's a good point.
Exactly.
And actually, your framework for figuring out pricing, you covered some of it in a really awesome detail. And again, I'll go back to your first book, The Executive Guides to Consultants. Just the way you laid that out, I'm like, man, this is brilliant stuff. I don't know this. I need to know it. because this is going to help me. I'll be quite frank. It's going to help me charge more money.
Yeah.
If I can,
which is fine.
Yeah, that's what I want. I want to be worth it. I want to deliver the highest level of service to my clients possible. So they're like, wow, This is amazing. This is absolutely critical. This is amazing.
That's exactly right. It's good for you and it's good for them. So yeah, don't ever be shy or apologize for charging what you're worth and charging a lot of money so that you can deliver the outcome that your client needs. Your cost is a fraction of the value your client should receive. So just don't worry about it.
Absolutely. Okay, here's the last question.
All right.
What's the one question I should have asked today that I didn't ask?
Oh, I think you asked exceptionally good questions. You haven't asked yet, David, can I have you back? Because we have a lot more to cover.
We do. So tell us about your business, davidafields.com.
Yep.
You've also got some free bonuses, which I've already signed up for. And I'm surprised you're not charging for these, but in fact, tell us about those. davidafields.com / all one word winning clients is where I got those. Is there a different URL that we could go to?
No, I mean, that works. You can go there. If you just do guide to winning clients, that'll take you to, I think, Amazon to buy the book. What I would highly recommend is when you get the book, download the free bonus resources that accompany the book. Those are really good.
Those are the ones actually I mistakenly referred to. Those are the resources I'm referring to. They're fabulous, and I'm actually surprised you're not charging for some of these because they're that good.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm happy to share the IP. So I would absolutely get those, and that's probably a good place to start. And then we kind of separate between solo practices and boutiques, which are have employees. But there's programs for each.
Nice. Anything else you want to say before we wrap?
Well, I appreciate you doing this. I think what you're doing is creating value for your community, and that's impressive. That's inspiring.
That's the goal. I really appreciate you being on the show today. And I do, when I say this with all sincerity, because I read everybody's work before I do the interviews, even though I haven't finished the first book, it's really, really going to transform my business. I really have thoroughly enjoyed it. And if it takes a lot to get me excited about stuff, I've actually been very, very excited as I read through your stuff. So you've done a wonderful job, and I just want to thank you for that.
Yeah, cool. I appreciate that feedback. Anytime I can be of help or help to your listeners, your audience, just let me know.
If you know someone who's a consultant or does any type of consulting work with clients, I'd encourage you to pass along this conversation to them. And I want to thank you in advance for doing so. Additionally, I'd like to recommend a handful of other episodes, especially if you're a consultant, your work requires consulting with clients, or you're thinking about becoming a consultant, or this conversation has been useful to you. I want to encourage you to check those out. One of those is episode 344 with my good friend Frank Soma. As everybody knows, coronavirus, COVID-19 has literally changed almost everything about how consultants acquire new clients. And in this particular conversation, Soma revealed NLP communication methods, that stands for neuro-linguistic programming. I'm sure you already knew that. But he revealed methods that'll help you stand out in a crowded and confused marketplace. And yes, the marketplace is confused by a lot at this particular moment in time. And so when you listen to the conversation and deploy the methods that Soma gives you, your consulting practice will not only survive these troubled times, but it'll be able to thrive. And it's a wonderful complement to today's conversation with David Fields. Again, that's episode 344. I'd also recommend episode 388 with my dear friend Mike Darrington. You know, among Darrington's many, many accomplishments as a consultant, I think the one that sticks out the most for me is how he brought DuPont's sports nutrition sector back from the brink of insolvency, restructured and built it into one of the industry's most profitable companies. Darrington has a long track record of helping huge corporations like DuPont, as well as small independently owned businesses become profitable again, which has earned him the nickname, the man with the Midas touch. And yes, he loves to be called the man with the Midas touch. And during our conversation, Darrington revealed the business success system that never fails, helps you get clients now and make more sales instantly, which, by the way, got rave reviews and feedback from members of the Get Clients Now Nation of fans. So episode 388 for that. And then lastly, I'd like to recommend one of our more recent shows, which was episode 392, The Ultimate Guide for Transforming Your Podcast into a Trojan Horse for Acquiring High-Value Consulting Clients with me, your host, Ken Newhouse. Now, if you're like me and if you're like my most successful clients, you're always on the lookout for methods you can use to consistently attract high-value consulting clients and bring them into your business. I got to tell you, launching a podcast and building it on the framework I've developed over the past 4 years allows me to say unequivocally that a podcast can be one of the most effective tools you can use to consistently bring high-value consulting clients into your practice. So if you're looking to bring more of those high-value clients into your consulting practice, which I know you are, and do it consistently and do it easier than you can imagine. Yes, this is easier than you can imagine. Go ahead and listen to episode 392, which dovetails perfectly with today's conversation. Now, all those episodes you can find on the KenNewhouse.com website. And remember, we're launching the free membership portal we've been building for you on March 1st, 2021, where you're going to be able to search the entire library of conversations we've had over the years on a variety of topics that'll help you bring more high-value clients into your consulting business and then keep them for a lifetime. Additionally, I want you to remember, the first 100 people to register on March 1st are going to get a free copy of the updated version of my book, Profitable Again, as well as a copy of my newest book, Profitable Podcast Blueprint, which was the featured topic of episode 392 that I just talked about. Now, when you decide to register for the free membership on KenNewhouse.com, you'll have instant access to each of the conversations I've had with my guests, conversations which are going to be organized by topic, plus you're going to get access to my weekly strategy guide for consultants that'll come out every Wednesday with special resources I think are going to be helpful for you. You'll also get access to the notes from that week's episode, my own personal library, the member casts, and all the free video and audio trainings that'll be available for you on the website. And speaking of amazing content, my guest next week is Chris Filipiak, who, according to my guest today, David Fields, is one of his top students. Filipiak's consulting business helps CEOs in companies ranging in size from one employee, the solopreneur, to hundreds of employees, and helps them build highly successful sales teams. So whether you're a team of one or your sales team has a dozen or more members, next week's episode with Chris Filipiak is going to reveal several key strategies that can help you increase your sales an average of 172% in less than 90 days, which is absolutely incredible. Now, I got to say, a few of these strategies, I already knew them, but there were a handful of them that were totally new for me, and number 3 absolutely blew me away. So join me next week for a conversation with Chris Filipiak as we discuss strategies for building a highly successful sales team so you can get clients now and make your business more profitable than ever. All right, I'll see you guys next Tuesday.
Our objective with this podcast is to help you and your business stand out in the marketplace by crystallizing your messaging, marketing, and communications. On behalf of the whole Ken Newhouse team, thanks for listening.